I can still tell that in a lot of the associations, like say Harvard Health or the Mayo Clinic, who we use quite a bit for their research, are still reluctant to say that nobody should drink. The World Health Organization, on the other hand, came out 2.5 years ago and said no alcohol is good alcohol. So they looked at all the research and said they could not support even drinking red wine for resveratrol for antioxidants, that wasn't enough of a benefit for the damage that ethanol, um, which is what alcoholic drinks are, does to all aspects of our brain and body. So we aren't, uh, you know, we're not teetotalers, even though when you come to the program for the week, we pull alcohol out, but we also pull sugar out, and we pull out dairy, and we pull out all kinds of inflammatories out of the diet. And um, we basically know that alcohol is an inflammatory causing um, process in our body to have it neutralized. And we know that sugar causes inflammation. And we know that coffee and teas with high caffeine levels also stimulate hormones and put our nervous system into a different state. So we are pretty clean and clear for that week when people come through the Balanced Health Reset program. But I would never say to anybody that they should never drink alcohol. So Mountain Trek's perspective is balance, first and foremost. So how can we incorporate alcohol? Because we know it's socially part of intermixing, it's part of meal pairing, it's used in all kinds of ways in our culture and society and has for, like I said, millennia. How do we do it so that we're causing the least amount of damage to our health? And that's really what this is about. Mount Truck isn't about no sugar ever, no caffeine ever, no alcohol ever. It's the right amounts, frequencies, and timings. Those three things make the biggest difference to how our metabolism can utilize those inputs and not cause further harm, basically, to our health, our metabolism, our brain, our gut biome, all of those things. So I'm open to any questions if anybody has any. Before Alex offers the first one, what I would say that our perspective around alcohol is to bring as much mindfulness into it as possible. If we can take a beverage and take it in like a sommelier and notice the aromas. Notice that taste buds, all five taste buds on our tongue. This happens to be a non-alcohol IPA, and IPAs are very bitter. So I'm noticing on the side of my tongue, those taste buds where bitterness is are really activated with this kind of beverage. It'll be different with Tanqueray gin. It'll be different with a red wine. So if you're going to have an alcoholic beverage, sip it, savor it, enjoy the aromas that are bursting into your olfactory system. Notice the taste buds, allow it to come into the mix of the meal. And then you might find after two, three, five, 8 sips of drinking that that might be enough. Because it's very easy with alcohol to drink one glass, and then the effects of that alcohol on our prefrontal cortex, our discerning center of our brain, gets affected right away, and we end up pouring a second because the our filter kind of drops. Our ability to stay present and aware and noticing things gets soft, and we end up maybe having a second glass and not even tasting it by the time we're into our second glass. So just like chewing our food mindfully, if we drink a beverage mindfully, we'll probably eat or drink less through that process. How does that land for you folks? The biggest shocker that I got in the researching I did about alcohol was that having alcohol daily or even weekly, regularly it's called, is the biggest effect on our system. Having alcohol once in a while, like a special event, a social event that's bringing people together, or something that isn't just after work happy hour regularly. Our system can manage it, okay? But if we're having to come home and have even just one glass every single day, that puts a negative effect on our gut biome. It causes cortisol levels to go up. It affects our brain even so much so that it actually will shrink the brain. It puts our liver into an inflammatory response as it's breaking down the ethanol, and that gut and brain and liver axis that is linked in our system will then lead to cytokines and other other inflammatory markers being released in the system. And so now we've got a big inflammatory response that doesn't get a chance to get a break the next day when we have alcohol or the next day. Whereas if we have it once in a while, all of those markers can come back down, back to stasis, to normal, kind of get neutralized, and then the system can handle having alcohol again, maybe in a three days or the next week. But having it regularly as part of our daily routine is the hardest for our systems.
Hmm. So the moderation of one glass a day, in theory, the continuation of that is the lack of moderation. The
Yes,
one a day is not moderation.
no, one a day is not moderation. Even if we only drink on the weekends and we have 8 drinks on Saturday and Sunday and we average those out over the week, that would be considered regular drinking.
Hmm.
So it's, you don't want too much in one time for the damage that incurs, and you don't want it consistently. So having it more as a special occasion or, and of course, mindfully so that you don't take in too much, while the brain kind of gets softer and less focused and less vigilant, is probably the best way to incorporate it in your life. So let me pause there and see if there's any questions. I definitely don't want to apostolize you and tell you that you shouldn't be drinking alcohol. Please get that.
But you hear all kinds of, research on positive effects of one glass of wine, red wine a day.
If you look carefully at
Positive.
who sponsors those researches, Brian, it's just like other things, other products that are produced for us. Um, you can get more Resveratrol in grapes, peanuts, blueberries than you do out of a glass of Bordeaux.
Mhm.
So yes, we can say there's some little minor benefits by drinking red wine specifically because it's picking up those phenols from red grapes, but you can get way more of that antioxidant by eating real food.
Mhm.
It seems like the only remaining conversation that can be had about alcohol as a positive is in the social realm, the social emotional realm, in a bonding.
Um, it's a good question because I don't condemn using it for a de-stressor.
Mhm.
Okay, so you come back from work, you've had a really, really tough day, everything's kind of falling apart around you, and you really just want a state shift. You may not have the bandwidth or the energy to go meditate or do yoga or go for a walk in nature or do other things that state shifts the mind. And you might just only have enough energy to just kick back and have a little glass of something and let the mind kind of state shift with the chemistry and just keep it at that one. I'm not, I don't see that as an evil thing to do. It's just that if we're doing it every single day to cope with life, then we may want to look at other ways to state shift the mind and incorporate them and weave them into our life with lifestyle habits. It might mean on the way home from work, if you're in 6 months of really intense work and you know you've got to get through that, you might stop and get a massage on your way home from work one day, or you might go for a walk in a park, or you might come home and do some gardening, or you might come home and pet your pet. These are all things that will state shift our mind and will bathe the brain in the same neurochemistry, the serotonin specifically, that mood enhancing neurotransmitter that we get from drinking alcohol will still come from those other activities I just mentioned and state shift us so that we get a drop from that vigilant state that we're in with cortisol at work, holding everything together. So it really comes down to mindfulness. If we're mindful about why and how much and when, I think that for most of us, we can incorporate a little bit of alcohol here and there. Not every day, though. It's just flat out science is saying no.
So if I was Winston Churchill, I shouldn't be watching this.
Mhm.
You could go all the way
I mean,
back to
you know,
10,000 years ago, and everybody, we could say, would not agree with us.
one of the most brilliant minds of all time.
Yes,
You know,
but I wouldn't say that he was a healthy fellow.
no, he wasn't. That's true.
And he didn't live that long, did he? I
I'm not
think
sure
maybe
how
into his 70s.
70s, unfortunately. Yeah. But the thing is that I read the whole article, by the way, which was actually quite interesting. Um, so what exactly, when you talk about negative effects, right? So let's say having a glass of red wine, which I enjoy having every evening, I have to say, particularly because I do a lot of cooking before I'm cooking, you know, having that glass of wine, you're cooking, you're thinking, it just helps my creativity
Yeah.
and stuff. So having that glass, let's say half a glass of wine, I don't drink a glass, half a glass of wine. What exactly, how negative are the effects?
Let's spin that a little bit, Brian. Talk about how you can support your system mitigating those effects.
Hmm,
So having it early, like you say, while you're cooking is a really good thing. The later we drink alcohol, the more it disrupts our sleep.
hmm,
Okay.
yeah, good
Just
point.
like we learned at COVID, what did we all go through? Every building we ever went in during COVID, what did we pump into our hands?
Yeah, hand,
Alcohol. So we know if we are going to pump those alcohol pumps in and drink it, it's basically the same thing. It's ethanol. Doesn't taste as good as a nice Argentinian red wine, but it's basically that's what we're doing. So we swallow that alcohol down. It goes into our intestinal tract where we have like 20 million species of gut flora,
right.
bacteria. And that bacteria killing alcohol starts killing, I would think it would kill all bacteria, but the research shows that for some reason it seems to kill mostly our good bacteria. That allows other populations of more negative bacteria to flourish.
Hmm,
Then our intestinal walls start to become more permeable to allow undigested food and negative bacteria to enter our circulatory system when they're not, it's not supposed to at that point. That stuff's supposed to end up down in our colon and we poop it out. So you would want to make sure you're replacing your gut flora.
mhm,
So that would be a thing in your day-to-day living. Make sure you're having kimchi or sauerkraut or some yogurt or kefir, things so that you keep repopulating the positive gut flora. And then that's countering that negative effect. Making sure you drink water after the dinner. Try not to drink too much through your meal. It dilutes your digestive enzymes. And then that also will help the body neutralize it a little bit. Because basically, all of that, um, all the contents of your intestines go through the liver and to be filtered. And so that's where the liver then starts to pull out the ethanol and break it down into various components. And acetaldehyde is the dangerous one that leads to cancer. Other ones um, are more like vinegar. So early, you've got 3 hours before bed, and then it's not going to disrupt your sleep because the liver's already finished doing the processing. It doesn't, otherwise, if you drink towards bed, the liver actually heats up in that breakdown process. And that's what keeps us in a lighter stage of non-REM and REM sleep.
That's a really good point. I always drink early before
That's the best thing you can.
dinner, even before I even eat.
And you're talking about drinking half a glass.
Half a glass. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, the amount, frequency, timing, and amounts are just your considerations to work with it with your system. And then it doesn't hurt to take a month break once in a while. You know, if it's October or January when, society says, hey, let's take a break from alcohol for a month, doesn't hurt to do that. It's like a cleanse in a way. Gives your liver a break from just having to manage that poison, which I hate to call it that, but really that's what the liver sees ethanol as a poison.
Hmm.
We make conscious decisions to ingest toxins a lot.
All kinds.
Living in a city is effectively a semi-conscious decision to ingest pollutants. And so that seems to be also part of the balance is we find rewards in these behaviors, and we have to be as educated and possible as possible on what is the deleterious effect of making this choice. Am I okay with that? Is that still worth it to me? Because a good glass of wine does taste great. Non-alcoholic wines don't taste great. So the value of taste.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that the fastest growing sector of the beverage, industrial beverage community is non-alcohol drinks.
Hmm.
Guinness spent 2 years of R&D time to create a Guinness stout that would be as identical tasting as their alcohol version. So that's a big investment some of these companies are making to grab some of this new market, basically, where less people are drinking all the time. Less people are questioning alcohol for their longevity and their health span, and they're looking for alternatives, and that's a huge growing market right now. Corona, the beverage beer, they spent a year coming up with a non-alcohol Corona that would taste as identical to the alcohol Corona as possible. So these aren't just like, hey, let's de-alkalize our beer and put it on the market. They want to make sure that they're capturing the market. Tanqueray's coming out with non-alcohol, all gin. It's a growing sector. And I I bet there will be one day a wine that doesn't taste like the grape juice at communion.
There's something animalistic to consuming mind-altering substances. I read a study once, and you might know of it better than me, that almost every animal has figured out a way to consume something fermented that gives them a slightly altered state of mind. So what is that? What is in our DNA that causes us to crave these altered state of minds?
Well, if we get chemically and look at what is the altered state, it's primarily a neurotransmitter like serotonin. Serotonin is a mood enhancing and stabilizing neurotransmitter that comes when as part of our process of drinking alcohol. And whether it's the flock of cedar waxwings flying into my little area here and eating a bunch of fermented mountain ashberries in February and they start to fly around all tipsy, you're right. It's an easy way to get an altered state.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's got stress. It's just normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of our society. So it's normal to want to get an altered state.
But as you've identified in the past talks and can do so again here, there's other means that can unlock those same um, and
Neurotransmitters.
yeah, those neurotransmitters without the deleterious effects.
Yes. And they're neurotransmitters slash feel-good hormones. So the three big ones are dopamine, a reward, motivation enhancing neurotransmitter, serotonin, our mood stabilizing, enhancing feel-good hormone, and oxytocin, our bonding, social, emotional one. So I think when we're drinking socially, that is also what we get. So we're getting that serotonin uptake, and then we're also getting the laughter and the enjoyment of being socially with other people, having a drink or so, and everybody's a little bit looser and lighter of being, and there's oxytocin flows. So those are big reward chemicals to keep drinking. It takes more effort to say, I'm going to go get a massage or go do a creative pursuit or go for a walk in nature or any of those things I just mentioned that will generate the same feel-good hormones. The only thing I'd like you to know, though, is when we have happy hour and we have guacamole and chips and we have a glass of our red wine or a margarita, basically we're getting the trifecta of carb, fat, and salt. And that trifecta releases those feel-good hormones we just described, but unfortunately, they don't lower the stress hormone cortisol. Alcohol does not lower cortisol, it masks it.
Mm.
Whereas gardening, creative pursuits, being touched by another, mind and body united activities, flow state, those things actually lower the stress hormone cortisol. And so a lot of times when we're attracted to having a glass of wine or a beverage at happy hour at the end of the workday, we want that cortisol to come down. Unconsciously we do, and we want to get the feel-good hormones. But unfortunately, after the first drink's over, cortisol's still here. And unfortunately, because ethanol is a toxin that our body is stressed by, it produces more cortisol. And research is now showing that people who drink regularly have higher levels of ongoing cortisol.
So if we in the past have gone into stressful situations where alcohol has been present, say it's a Christmas party or holiday party, and we've thought to ourselves, okay, I'm going to have a couple glasses of wine that'll calm me down, then I'll be able to socialize and appreciate the kin that I'm amongst. We'd be better off to perhaps at the party be drinking a non-alcoholic so that you're engaged and participating in the event, but have done something prior to the event to have lowered your cortisol. So you're going into it relaxed. You're not needing the alcohol to relax.
I'm a big proponent of preparing and resourcing ourselves before we know we're going into a stressful situation, whether it's at work or socially or an argument that we have to find a, a, a nonviolent solution to with a loved one. Any of those kinds of things, if we can take a little bit time to ourselves, get grounded and centered, and then go into them, we become there's less cortisol released. So yes, that's great, but I wouldn't say that you should have to only have a non-alcoholic beverage at that dinner party at Christmas. You might have a glass of real wine or a brandy and eggnog or whatever it is you want to have, maybe one, and then go to the non-alcoholic. I'm not saying no. That you guys might that's not fair to everybody. So it's again mindful saying, I'm going to go to that party, I'm going to have one glass, and then I'm going to switch to the non-alcoholic punch or whatever's going on. And you're just staying mindful about what's happening.
And presetting that strategy sounds very smart. So in the
Yes.
moment, you don't convince
Pre,
yourself otherwise.
yeah, pre-resource before stress. We perform so much better. Any other questions?
We've got one in the chat here. If you curb drinking for a period of time, let's say 1 year, how do you rationalize having a drink after such a long streak if you're at an important social event?
I think first off, that it's most people aren't, I mean, I would say 10 years ago, if you went to a social event and you didn't drink and you ordered a non-alcohol Shirley Temple to the table, you'd stand out like a sore thumb. But these days now, the the pressure to drink along with everybody else has come way down. So you could have a mocktail or you could have a non-alcohol beer or something, and most people aren't even going to notice. Whether you're holding a 0.0 Heineken or Beck's or anything like that at a social gathering and walking around and talking, no one's going to see whether it's alcoholic or non-alcoholic. So I think we can let that kind of go to the side that we have to drink because of social pressure. And then help me with the part of the question again. Is it about how do we manage ourselves in that social setting?
How do we rationalize having the drink after such a long
Oh, I
streak?
see. After not drinking. This is where we're all different. I've I've had a relationship with alcohol through my life where I would want to drink every day if I was under stressful work periods. I would go through periods where I wouldn't drink for a month or I wouldn't drink for almost a year, and I would notice that I was jonesing for it. So I've grown up through genetics where alcoholism has been in my lineage. So some of us have a, a more stronger desire to drink alcohol than others and are affected. We all are affected slightly differently by alcohol. I had an epiphany 6 years ago and I stopped. But that's my journey. I'm not saying any of you should do that. We have to find our own particular relationship to alcohol. At this point, I have no desire to drink it because I love the freedom of having a clear mind. That to me is golden. I have my evenings where I can be creative or research or do other things, and I don't feel a little bit soft and mushy and under motivated and which alcohol did do that to me in other periods of my life. So I wouldn't make the social event be the reason to break your 1 year of alcohol if you're really enjoying being alcohol free. Hold on to it and just treat life as an experiment. Go for another month and see what that feels like. Go to that event and don't drink and see what comes up for you and how it makes you feel and see whether it's incorporative or not. Um, yeah, with all of this, treat life as an experiment.
Kirk, has anybody done the studies of the Brits? My daughter lives in London, so we've been there many times. It's unbelievable how much they drink.
In England,
Yes, I'm,
all through
I'm
Europe.
well, okay, I'm particularly exposed to Britain. So has
Okay.
anybody done studies of their
Yes,
lifespan in Britain versus the rest of the world? Like, I mean, there's a pub on every corner, and people really drink a heck of a lot.
they do. They do.
Way more than I could ever
Yes,
even try and keep up with.
they're alcoholically fit. They can handle it. A lot of the research that is coming out of Europe. You know, Iceland also is big drinking.
Hmm.
Russia, the Eastern Bloc countries. Alcohol, don't forget that in medieval Europe, alcohol was the only way to get your liquid because of the poor sanitary conditions that water was in. You know,
Right.
you could drink running water.
Yeah,
So it
that's
had to be boiled and cooked and
yeah.
mixed with grapes or beer or meat or honey to become an alcoholic beverage. Now, don't forget too that the alcohol content back in the medieval Europe was super low. If you went to the high mountains of the Andes in Peru right now, beer's being drunk all the time, but it's less than 2% alcohol,
Hmm.
corn beer.
Hmm.
So, you know, content and amounts is also a big part of it. But we've just been habituated from medieval times to make it a social thing and a relaxing way to become relaxed and to handle trauma and stress. They were warring in Europe forever with each other.
So the studies show that the longevity of these heavy drinking countries is lower.
I'm not
Short,
sure if,
shorter,
yes, shorter.
shorter is what I meant.
Yeah, cirrhosis of
Average
the
lifespan.
liver. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. By the way, I refer Mountain Trek. I can't tell you to how many people. It's like
Thank you.
unbelievable. So I don't know how many end up going. I have no idea. But
Well, don't forget there's a referral discount if they tell Alex when they book that you referred them, Brian.
yeah, I just look at I just tell people, you know, as
Thank
many
you.
people as I can tell. So have
Thank
there
you.
been many changes to the program?
Yes,
I,
we're constantly tweaking it.
I
Um,
read some stuff on it.
Yeah, and even right now, Katya and I are retweaking things for this coming year where we'll have some more sessions in the evening that will be different. And we've readjusted the schedule slightly so that people aren't being kept up at night with activities. We've removed all after dinner workouts. We do go for
Mm,
a walk after dinner instead and do our workouts before dinner. So
no,
we're always looking at not only guest feedback from the comment forms that we receive. Well, I can't say that we are always good about that. For like 22 years, we ignored the fact that nobody liked working out after dinner until recently, and now we don't do it. So sometimes we're slow learners, but otherwise, yes, you would notice some changes, Brian.
oh, good. You still make up that delicious soup for the hikes for lunches?
Every single lunch. Yeah.
Really miss those.
And we have a new cookbook. I don't know if you've gotten it, but it's a great source for you to be able to get some of those soup recipes and make them yourself.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
Any other questions? Comments? Comments are just as good as questions.
This is very, very informative and really useful.
Yeah, I think you could. I personally, I have a strategy to typically around the holidays, I go to my in-laws and my in-laws do serve really good wine. So I think it tastes good. But I've
Mm,
mentally noted that one glass, and then they typically have some non-alcoholic beer there, which is good. But I'm gonna personally try to do a pre-arrival event that lowers my cortisol so that I
Mhm.
can come into there not expecting that glass of wine to make the night more enjoyable.
Mm.
Then I can be present and really savor that one glass and have it last. And you wrote in the article to savor it like a sommelier, and I think that's a really good mental note. So thank you.
Yeah, and as we're eating and we're pairing that last sip of wine with what we're eating and noticing what flavors are coming and mixing and all of that, that's really living mindfully and enjoy. Like if you're going to drink your alcohol, really enjoy it. Really enjoy it.
yeah. That's a really good point, actually.
Yeah. It makes all the difference actually. If we're doing something out of, and we feel guilty about doing it, I think the poison level goes up. If you drink it with enjoyment, I think the body's able to incorporate it. But we have to be really present when we're doing it to enjoy it.
Yeah. Absolutely agree.
All right, folks, wishing you all the best in health and happiness over the holiday season.